it was said that this is not what we stand for. So, and that generated, 3 centuries of conflict. But we were, the Constitution did not enlist itself on the side of slavery. Nevertheless, it recognized a conflict. We had to have a civil war to end it. In some ways, people would say it still hasn't ended. But I mean, but the U.S. was really trying there. At least a lot of the U.S. was really trying. And a lot of people who didn't hold slaves, didn't care in their own immediate personal lives, nevertheless, got themselves killed about this. So, in that sense, being like the U.S. isn't such a disgrace. The Mexico City, I'm really happy to be here. It's a great thrill to be here. I'm sorry I can't stay longer. I have a complicated life that I gotta go back to. I'll be here till Sunday. But many people from UNAM have been really heroic in driving me around and showing me how many different people live. Something that I have I've been around cities somewhat in my life, so I'm at least partly prepared for that. I haven't been to the industrial sections. I'm kind of envious because one of the tragedies in American life has been the evaporation of industry. America was the greatest industrial country in the world for generations, and so much of it is gone now. So I'm glad if Brazil, if Latin America can hold on to theirs, and to the extent that the labor movement helps do this, I'm very glad. I think Perry Anderson, I think, is a very smart, nice person. But his idea that modernism ended in 1914 or 1917 or a long time ago before we were born, it's just silly. It's a way of leaving out things that are essential to people's lives. And as a scholarly move, it's very perverse. It's like saying he's not going to give himself a chance to really look into connections that could be very vital for him. Whether he would say that now, I haven't seen him in a long time. I don't know. But let's see. Now, I think streets are pretty important. They're a way of people encountering each other in some direct social way. I think a lot of modern society is arranged to keep people from encountering each other. A lot of spaces in which people will never meet, will never have a chance to meet, will never get to see each other. I think that this is very sad. I think, however, that one thing that you could say that's about the mass media of the 20th century is they've enabled people to see each other better than people could ever see each other before. So that you can look at the kids who live 10,000 miles away and see how they're like you or like your kids. And look at the old people and see how they're like the old people. And even not know the languages and not know what they're saying, and yet grasp that there's an essential connection between you. And that was one of the things that I tried to show in my book, and that I think is really important for people to grasp. And it's also a reason for watching television and computers, that you can see these people that you can connect with. I mean, there are other not so nice reasons to watch these things. Ways of wasting your time and getting off, and I'm not going to go into that in detail because you can fill in the blank better than I can. But one of the things that's really striking is the way in which people can recognize each other. And I think I don't know if it's really brand new, but it's pretty new. And in 1900, it was such a dogma in so many parts of the world that culture is determined by language. So if you have a different language from somebody else, you're just completely different. There's nothing you have in common. And this is really stupid, but it's not the first stupidity to hold a great deal of power. But one of the things that just going to movies or turning on television or the computer can disabuse you of that. can show you instantly the connection between you and other people. I mean, even if you don't know how to say it, but you can feel it. So, you know, in that sense, I'm a tremendous fan of the media, and I think they're one of the things that, if we pay attention, can bring us together. Great, is that the door? Let me get water.
Bien. Pedro Sánchez, de Guamas, Capozalco. ¿Consideraría usted añadir un nuevo capítulo a todo lo sólido? Si así fuera, ¿qué ciudad y qué autor elegiría?
I need a mic.
Yeah.
The city I'd most like to spend a year in and be able to write about, I'll never be able to, is Shanghai. The authors that I the contemporary, relatively contemporary authors whom I most love are Oren Pamuk and Roberto Bolaño. And alas, Bolaño died young, but his books keep coming out. And they're really quite wonderful. And a thrill to be there. And even if you're not a literature major, they're really knockouts. And Turkey is probably a country you don't know much about, and yet these are really thrilling books, and you can read a very short few pages and see the connection. And I would love to be able to write as these people can, and I would love to have a chance to write about them. I've written about Pamuk a little bit, but I think they're a good start. You know, I'll never get to Shanghai, but you know, I mean, one of the things that I tried to do in the book is to write a book that wouldn't be finished, but that the readers would have a chance to write their own new chapters, to write them, or take pictures of them, or compose music about them. And you know, I think that it's open to you. It's there. So if you feel any connection with the book, think of yourself as being able to write it more. And when you do this, be sure to send it to me, please. Let me get to share it as well.
Ante los problemas del cambio climático, ¿considera usted que nos acercamos a la gran tragedia de la modernidad? Francisco Lemus, Ciencias Políticas, UNAM. La siguiente pregunta.
Yeah, no, I think we have time. I think we have time. I think if all leaders show any brains, you know, they'll be able to talk about it now. I think Obama showed at least some suggestion that he was interested in bringing this up. And I think this series of storms that has devastated a great deal of the coast of America recently, and I'm sure you've seen some of it on the TV or the computers, you know, will enable people to focus. And it sounds like Obama might be able to do that. So let's wish him luck.
Eduardo Salazar Martínez, de la Escuela Nacional de Antropología e Historia. Acerca de la distinción que usted hace entre modernidad y modernización, ¿está usted de acuerdo que en América Latina hay modernización, pero no modernismo? Y la otra, ¿en qué grado las sociedades llegan a tener la experiencia de modernidad a través de la modernización tecnológica?
I think modernity often comes through technological modernization, but I try to argue in the book that it isn't just a matter of technology, but of people appropriating what's technically there and grasping what it means for them, and not accepting blueprints as the end of history. Changing the blueprints and understanding. And one of the reasons for me to put stuff like, to talk about things like the Declaration of Independence, is that you have the power to do that. You can write the new chapters. You don't have to take the blueprints as they're laid down to you.
¿A qué cree que se debe el olvido del carácter emancipatorio de la modernidad? Porque generalmente solo se hace énfasis en sus características perversas.
I don't know if it wasn't forgotten by me, but I think in some ways life is easier if you can get everybody to obey instructions and not yell, and not there to be fights and conflicts, and life can just go on and not be very exciting or interesting. And many people have chosen to do that, and other people have never gained consciousness that they even have a choice. And that's something that I guess my book was trying to get people to see, that they did have a choice, that they could write more chapters.
Georg Leidenberger, Huamcoajimalpa. Did you ever meet Jürgen Habermas? If yes, what did you talk about? If not, would you like to meet him, and what would you talk about? Did you ever meet Jürgen Habermas? If yes, what did you talk about? If not, would you like to meet him, and what would you talk about?
Well, I met him. I gave him a copy of this book. I said, I'd love to hear what you think. Oh, I gave him a copy of this book. I said, I'd love to hear what you think about it, and that was the last I heard. So I'd still love to hear what he thinks about it, because it seems to me that it's of a very similar, I mean, it has a different vocabulary from his, and yet written in a very similar spirit. So, and I would certainly be, and because he's a thinker I really admire, I'd be very glad if he would get that. But whether he does or not,
Eric Morales, el título de su libro solo debe ser entendido como una frase marxista, o también incluye la idea hegeliana sobre el reconocimiento de la autoconciencia del individuo.
When the book first came out in the 80s, I used to have fights with communists who would say, that is not Karl Marx. Karl Marx does not say that. And I'd say, let's get the text here. And they'd say, that's a mistranslation. Why don't we tell me what he said? And these exchanges were not very fruitful. But yes, I think it absolutely does have a Hegelian tendency. This is one reason that some Marxists don't like it. It was one reason that Engels had a hard time with a lot of Marx's work. And Engels, after Marx died, who was his executor and inherited his, the German word is Nachlass, the work that someone who dies has left over, wanted to destroy the essay on alienated labor. And Eleanor said, his daughter, Eleanor, you can't do that. You have to leave it up to mankind to see what it means. And Engels said, but it's so Hegelian. And she said, you have to. Don't you think enough of him as a thinker to leave it to mankind? And Engels said, yes, forgive me. So I'm glad, as a result of this, that I think the best thing Marx ever wrote was the Manifesto. But I think number 2 is the alienated labor ethic. But it's fascinating that the Manifesto has been around for a long time. But the alienated labor ethic came out not quite 2 minutes ago, but a fairly short time ago. So it's strange that the ongoing life of the movement has such different chapters here, and that many people live their whole lives as Marxists without very much of a sense of what was involved in Marxism, or only a very partial sense. But, however, we know, now there are fairly good texts. We have the stuff. We can work it out. We can play with it. But it's strange. And as a teacher of Marxism, trying to get it across to people and saying that millions of people saw themselves as Marxists, and yet had only a very slight idea of what was involved in it. And I say that's not quite true, because if you read chapter 15 of Capital and this and that and this and that, you get some connection of it. And yet the most explosive formulations of it were missing. But, I mean, one of the nice things about getting old is that we can put things together in new ways and see new possibilities. So, so alienated labor came out in 1950. It was actually, it appeared in very esoteric German scholarly form in the 1930s, but it wasn't published until after Stalin's death. Stalin didn't like it. I mean, there were a lot of things Stalin didn't like and didn't want out there, but his 1844 essays were among them. And so it wasn't until 57 that the material got out there. So it's 1957, it's the Cold War. The alienated labor and those other early essays all come out. And for me, it's one of the most explosive things I ever read. And I'm really excited and thrilled. And there used to be a bookstore in New York called the Four Continents Bookstore. This was the Soviet International Publishers Bookstore. It was right above Barnes & Noble, and it was built in a very sort of replica of Barnes & Noble, except it had lots of pictures of polar bears. Anyway, so I bought 20 copies of it, and it was only 50 cents. I mean, it's very rare in your life you're going to get a buy like that. And they made up a very nice package for me, and I took it in the subway up to the Bronx and gave it as a Hanukkah present to everybody I knew. But meanwhile, the communist orthodoxy, like Louis Althusser in France, and the Cold War orthodoxies, like Sidney Hook in the USA, totally agreed that alienated labor doesn't count. That's before the ball game began. So you cross it out. You're not supposed to read it, let alone be influenced by it. But it was fascinating that the communist fanatics and the anti-communist fanatics totally agreed, and they both wanted alienated labor out of the picture. On the other hand, both the West, where many workers were very interested in this, and in the East, where workers were told all the time, you're so lucky you own the means of production, only guess what? Were fascinated by this, and it had a tremendous explosive impact. So, and I still am only understanding this in very fragmentary ways. But, I mean, it's saying how workers